the most iconic women in history was not just a queen, but the true power behind an empire? Imagine a figure so influential her face became the symbol of beauty and mystery for over 3,000 years. Yet her final fate remains one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles. Today on MindSpark Daily, we uncover the legend, the legacy, and the enduring enigma of Queen Nefertiti. Nefertiti was not just a royal consort, she was a revolutionary. Her name means, "The Beautiful One has come," and she arrived on the world stage during one of ancient Egypt's most radical eras. But who was she really? And why did she vanish from the historical record without a trace? Stay with us until the end to discover groundbreaking theories and the latest archaeological clues that could finally unlock her secrets. A queen ahead of her time. Nefertiti rose to prominence in the 14th century BCE as the wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten. But she was not a typical queen. In many depictions, she is shown not behind the king, but beside him, even smiting enemies or wearing the crown of a pharaoh herself. Akhenaten's reign marked a seismic shift in Egyptian religion. He abolished the traditional pantheon and established worship of one god, the sun disk Aten. Nefertiti was not just a supporter of this revolution, she was its co-leader. Together, they built a new capital city, Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna, and reshaped Egyptian spirituality, art, and royal power. The mystery deepens. Then, just as suddenly as she appeared in historical records, Nefertiti vanished. Around year 12 of Akhenaten's reign, inscriptions and images of her cease. Did she die? Was she banished? Or did she take on a new identity altogether? Some scholars believe she may have reigned as a pharaoh under the name Neferuaten, or even Smenkhkare. Others suggest she may have fallen from grace or died during a plague outbreak. Despite extensive searches, her tomb has never been conclusively identified, although recent radar scans in the Valley of the Kings hint at hidden chambers that may yet reveal her final resting place. Challenges in uncovering her truth. Piecing together Nefertiti's story is like assembling a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. Many records from her era were destroyed, defaced, or manipulated during later reigns, especially by successors eager to erase the controversial Aten experiment. Moreover, ancient Egyptian art was not always literal. Symbolism reigned supreme, making it difficult to distinguish myth from reality. Historians must navigate these symbolic nuances, as well as the political agendas of both ancient and modern interpreters. But breakthroughs are happening. High-resolution imaging, 3D reconstructions, and genetic studies of mummies from the Amarna period are helping researchers narrow the possibilities. The woman behind the crown. Despite the uncertainties, what we do know paints a picture of a brilliant, charismatic woman. Nefertiti was not just beautiful, her name has become a synonym for it, but powerful. Her depictions in temples and stelae show her participating in rituals, leading diplomacy, and perhaps even issuing royal decrees. Some experts speculate she was the mother or stepmother of Tutankhamun, the boy king who would later restore Egypt's old gods. If so, her influence would extend far beyond her own reign, into the very fabric of Egypt's dynastic saga. Legacy of a legend. Today, Nefertiti's bust, unearthed in 1912 and housed in Berlin, is one of the most iconic artifacts in the world. But her legacy is more than just aesthetic. She represents a moment in time when a woman stepped into the center of power, reshaped a nation, and became an eternal symbol of mystery and allure. Her story challenges modern assumptions about gender roles in antiquity, and her influence continues to ripple through art, fashion, and pop culture. Nefertiti's life is a blend of fact, theory, and legend, a reminder that even in the ancient world, some stories are too powerful to fade. She stood at the heart of a cultural and spiritual revolution, yet disappeared like a shadow on a wall. And that is what keeps us searching, because mysteries like hers are rare and worth solving. What do you think happened to Queen Nefertiti? Was she erased from history or hiding in plain sight? Drop your theories in the comments. We would love to hear them. And if you are fascinated by ancient mysteries, hit that like button, subscribe to MindSpark Daily, and ring the bell for more stories that spark curiosity and ignite your mind.
What if I told you the ancient Egyptians had a guidebook to cheat death? A sacred manuscript filled with spells, instructions, and magical passwords, meant to help the dead navigate the treacherous journey to the afterlife. This was not just mythology. It was a real document inscribed on tomb walls, coffins, and scrolls. It is called the Book of the Dead, and it might be the most misunderstood religious text in human history. Welcome to MindSpark Daily, where we bring the ancient world back to life. Today, we are diving into the mysteries of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, what it really was, what it was not, and why it still fascinates us over 3,000 years later. From heart-weighing rituals to protective spells, prepare to unlock one of history's most haunting guides to eternity. What is the Book of the Dead? First things first. The Book of the Dead is not a single book in the way we think of one today. It is a collection, a compilation of over 200 funerary texts, spells, hymns, and incantations, written on papyrus scrolls, tomb walls, and even on the linen wrappings of mummies. These texts were not standardized. Wealthy Egyptians could afford longer, customized versions, while commoners had shorter ones or none at all. The Egyptians called it the Book of Going Forth by Day. The goal? To help the soul, or Ka, leave the tomb and rejoin the realm of the living, at least spiritually. The journey through the afterlife. In Egyptian belief, death was just the beginning. The afterlife was a perilous journey filled with obstacles, demons, judgment, and tests of morality. The Book of the Dead was a spiritual roadmap, a GPS for the soul. Here is a simplified version of the journey. The soul leaves the body and enters the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. It encounters gatekeepers, lakes of fire, and serpent guardians. Each passage must be navigated using specific spells, passwords, or names, many of which were included in the book. The ultimate destination? The Field of Reeds, an eternal paradise that mirrored life on earth, but without suffering. But before that, the soul had to face one final trial, the weighing of the heart. Arguably the most iconic scene in the Book of the Dead is the weighing of the heart. In this ritual, the heart of the deceased was weighed against a feather, the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter or equal in weight, the soul was declared pure. If heavier, it meant a life filled with sin, and the soul was devoured by a terrifying beast named Amit, part lion, crocodile, and hippo. The weighing was overseen by Anubis, the jackal-headed god of mummification, while Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, recorded the results. To pass this test, the deceased often used spell 125, a negative confession reciting 42 sins they did not commit, like, I have not stolen, I have not slain men and women, I have not uttered lies. A kind of divine resume to convince the gods of their worthiness. Spells, symbols, and secrets. The book is filled with mysterious spells, each with a very specific purpose. Spell 6, or Ushabti spell, transforms Ushabti figurines into servants so that the deceased could avoid labor in the afterlife. Spell 30b protects the heart from being taken or speaking against the soul during judgment, also known as the weighing of the heart ceremony. Spell 148 offers provisions in the afterlife. And then there is the spell for not dying a second time, or spell 44. Yes, the Egyptians feared a second death, total annihilation, if one failed the spiritual tests. The illustrations in the book, called vignettes, helped visualize the spells. These stunning images were not just decoration, they were magical tools believed to activate the spell's power. Hieroglyphs were not just text, they were alive with divine energy. Who used it, and how? Initially, only royalty and high priests had access to these spells, inscribed inside pyramids and tombs. But over time, the book became more democratized. By the New Kingdom period, 1550 to 1070 BCE, even artisans and scribes could afford personalized scrolls, often buried with them in elaborate coffins. Many of these were produced by professional scribes who copied spells with spaces left for names to be filled in. Think of it as ancient funerary Mad Libs. No two versions are exactly alike. Some scrolls were 10 feet long. Others stretched to 70 feet, like the famous Papyrus of Ani created around 1250 BCE, now housed in the British Museum. Why it still matters. The Book of the Dead gives us a rare glimpse into the spiritual psychology of one of the world's oldest civilizations. It reveals what the Egyptians feared, what they hoped for, and what they believed made a life worth living. It also challenges modern assumptions about ancient religions. This was not superstition. It was a deeply structured spiritual system, rich with metaphor, symbolism, and ethical codes. Modern scholars are still uncovering new meanings hidden in the texts. The Book of the Dead continues to inspire art, film, literature, and even philosophy. It is not just a story about death. It is a story about what it means to live with purpose. So the next time you think of ancient Egypt, remember, it was not all pyramids and mummies. It was a culture obsessed with eternity, morality, and the soul's journey beyond the grave. The Book of the Dead was not morbid. It was hopeful, a guide for the soul to reach peace, truth, and everlasting joy. What spell or scene fascinated you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more ancient mysteries unraveled, be sure to subscribe and check out our upcoming video on the secrets of the Great Pyramid. Until next time, keep your mind sparked and your curiosity burning.
The scandalous reign of the Ptolemaic queens, power, poison, and intrigue in ancient Egypt. Welcome to MindSpark Daily. What if I told you that some of the most powerful and scandalous women in history did not rule from Rome or Babylon, but from the banks of the Nile? Ancient Egypt was no stranger to powerful queens. Look at Hatshepsut or Nefertiti. However, today, we are talking about the Ptolemaic queens. They were Greek rulers in an Egyptian world, navigating politics in a male-dominated court while also living under a microscope of public scrutiny and family betrayal. Forget what you think you know about Cleopatra. She was not the first Ptolemaic queen to wield power through seduction, strategy, or sheer political genius. And she certainly was not the most ruthless. The queens of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek royal family that ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great, were more than just consorts. They were pharaohs, puppet masters, poisoners, and political players in one of the most unstable and treacherous courts in history. Stay with me because this is the story of queens who ruled like kings, murdered like mobsters, and shaped the ancient world in ways history rarely tells. The Ptolemaic dynasty began in 305 BCE after Alexander the Great's death. His general, Ptolemy I Soter, took control of Egypt and declared himself king. But Ptolemaic Egypt was not a return to native rule, it was Greek at the top, Egyptian in the body. The Ptolemies ruled from Alexandria, a cultural melting pot and one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. What made the Ptolemies unique was not just their blend of cultures, it was the power their women held. While most ancient dynasties sidelined their queens, the Ptolemies embraced a radical model. Women could rule jointly, wield power independently, and even marry their brothers to maintain dynastic purity, a custom borrowed from Egyptian pharaohs. It was a formula that bred political ambition and deadly rivalries. Arsinoe II, the queen who became a goddess. The first truly dominant queen of the dynasty was Arsinoe II, sister wife of Ptolemy II Philadelphus. Born around 316 BCE, Arsinoe was not just a royal wife, she was a political mastermind. She married King Lysimachus of Thrace first, and when he was assassinated, she fled back to Egypt and married her brother. This was not just symbolic. Arsinoe co-ruled with Ptolemy II, appearing on coins, issuing decrees, and being deified during her lifetime, a rarity even in ancient Egypt. Some records suggest she orchestrated the death of her political rivals, including her stepchildren from her previous marriage. And yet she was worshipped as a goddess, hailed as a protector of Egypt and the dynasty. Her influence set the tone. The Ptolemaic queens were not ornaments, they were power players. Next comes Berenice II, murder, marriage, and meteor showers. Berenice II, a queen whose life sounds like a Shakespearean tragedy. She was the daughter of King Magus of Cyrene and married Ptolemy III Euergetes. But before that union, she was engaged to Demetrius the Fair, a dashing prince, and her stepmother's lover. When Berenice discovered the affair, she allegedly had Demetrius murdered in her bedroom. Her marriage to Ptolemy III was one of the more successful political alliances in the dynasty. She even took part in military campaigns and is credited with securing Egypt's eastern territories. And there is a poetic twist. Berenice cut off her hair as an offering for her husband's safe return from war. The story goes that the hair mysteriously disappeared, until astronomers claimed it had risen into the sky as a new constellation, Coma Berenices. Love, murder, and a literal star in her name. That is Ptolemaic queen material. Now let's talk about Cleopatra II and Cleopatra III, a dynasty at war with itself. Things get even messier with Cleopatra II and her daughter, Cleopatra III. Cleopatra II married her brother, Ptolemy VI, and ruled jointly. But after his death, she married another brother, Ptolemy VIII, known as Physcon, or Potbelly, a notoriously cruel and unpopular king. When Ptolemy VIII also married Cleopatra III, Cleopatra II's daughter, a civil war broke out within the royal family. Let that sink in, a queen was at war with her own husband and daughter. The conflict became so violent that Ptolemy VIII allegedly dismembered Cleopatra II's son, his own stepson, and sent her the pieces as a birthday gift. The war devastated Egypt's economy and population, and yet all three eventually reconciled and ruled together again. The Ptolemaic dynasty was not just a monarchy, it was a soap opera soaked in blood and betrayal. Cleopatra Selene and the Shadow of Rome. Among the lesser-known but fascinating queens was Cleopatra Selene, daughter of Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony. After the defeat of her parents at the Battle of Actium, Cleopatra Selene was taken to Rome as a prisoner of war, but later married off to King Juba II of Mauritania. She helped build a miniature Alexandria in North Africa, complete with libraries and Greek architecture, and promoted a fusion of Egyptian and Roman ideals. Though no longer ruling Egypt, Cleopatra Selene was a cultural ambassador and a reminder that even in exile, Ptolemaic women wielded influence. Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh. Of course, no story of the Ptolemaic queens is complete without Cleopatra VII, the last ruler of her dynasty, and Egypt's final pharaoh. Unlike earlier queens, Cleopatra was a true polyglot, speaking at least 9 languages, and the first Ptolemaic monarch to actually learn Egyptian. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were not just romantic. They were strategic partnerships to keep Egypt independent from Rome. Scandal surrounded her. She was portrayed as a seductress in Roman propaganda, but in truth, Cleopatra was a brilliant stateswoman who restored Egypt's economy, stabilized its currency, and led military campaigns. Her final act, tragically taking her own life in 30 BCE, was the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the beginning of Roman Egypt. But her legacy, immortal. The Ptolemaic queens were more than Cleopatra. They were generals, politicians, murderers, and myth makers. They shattered gender roles, ruled with absolute power, and left a legacy of brilliance, chaos, and controversy. They remind us that history is not always written by the victors. Sometimes it is written by the survivors, the strategists, the queens behind the thrones. So, if this journey into ancient power, scandal, and sisterhood intrigued you, there is so much more waiting to be uncovered. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for more deep dives into history's most fascinating figures, especially the ones who do not always get the spotlight they deserve. And let me know in the comments, which Ptolemaic queen do you think was the most powerful or the most dangerous? Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay curious.
Behind the myths, beyond the legends, who really was Cleopatra? A queen, yes. A lover of powerful men, sure. But more than anything, she was a brilliant strategist, a master of image and influence, and one of the most formidable leaders of the ancient world. Her story is not just history. It is political theater, dynastic drama, and a battle for survival in a world ruled by empires. Cleopatra VII. Theophilopator, which translates to Cleopatra, the father-loving goddess, was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek family that governed Egypt for nearly 300 years after the death of Alexander the Great. Born around 69 BCE, Cleopatra was not Egyptian by blood, but she embraced Egyptian culture more fully than any of her predecessors, styling herself as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis, and even learning the native Egyptian language, something most Ptolemies never did. She came to power as a teenager during a time of intense political turmoil. Egypt was a wealthy but weakened state, caught between internal family rivalries and the expanding influence of Rome. Cleopatra's ascent was anything but smooth. She was ousted from the throne, raised an army, and returned to power through calculated alliances and ruthless determination.
Imagine
One
a
of the
world
most
where a
defining
single
moments of her
accusation
life
could cost you
was
your life.
her bold move to meet
Where
Julius
dreams
Caesar.
turn
According to legend, she had herself smuggled into his quarters wrapped in a carpet. Whether or not the story is true, the outcome is undeniable. Cleopatra regained her throne, bore Caesar a son, and positioned Egypt at the heart of Roman political intrigue. After Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra aligned herself with Mark Antony, Rome's rising military star. Their alliance, both romantic and strategic, would shake the ancient world. Together, they tried to carve out a new Eastern empire, defying the Roman Senate and Octavian, Caesar's heir. But it was a doomed ambition. Following the decisive Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, Cleopatra and Antony's forces were defeated. The couple retreated to Alexandria, where they ultimately took their own lives as Octavian closed in. With Cleopatra's death, Egypt became a Roman province, and the era of the pharaohs came to an end. Yet Cleopatra's story did not die with her. For over 2,000 years, she has fascinated scholars, artists, and audiences alike. Was she a seductress or a sovereign, a manipulator, or a monarch doing what she must to survive? The truth lies somewhere in between, and that complexity is what makes her legend endure. She was a ruler who mastered the power of narrative, using her intellect, political savvy, and charisma to bend the world's greatest empire to her will, if only for a time. If you think Cleopatra's story is just about romance, think again. It is about survival, ambition, and the making of a myth that still echoes through history. Want more powerful stories from the ancient world? Do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for deep dives into history's most captivating figures, especially the women who changed the game.
Rome, a city on the Tiber River, started as a small village in Italy. The traditional founding date is 753 BC. According to legend, twin brothers Romulus and Remus founded Rome. A she-wolf raised the twins. Romulus eventually killed Remus and became the first king of Rome. This story captures the imagination, but the true origins of Rome are more complex. Archaeological evidence suggests a gradual development of the settlement. Early Rome was ruled by kings, some Etruscan, others Roman. The Romans overthrew the last king in 509 BC. They established a republic, a new form of government. In a republic, citizens have a say in the government. This change marked a turning point in Roman history. It set the stage for the city's remarkable rise to power. The Roman Republic did not become an empire overnight. It took centuries of warfare and expansion. Rome's powerful army was key to its success. The Roman legions were known for their discipline and effectiveness. They conquered neighboring Italian tribes and then expanded beyond Italy. One of Rome's greatest rivals was Carthage, a powerful city-state in North Africa. The Punic Wars, a series of 3 wars against Carthage, tested Roman strength. Rome emerged victorious, destroying Carthage and expanding into the western Mediterranean. By the 1st century BC, Rome controlled most of the Mediterranean world. This vast territory brought great wealth and power to Rome. It also brought new challenges. The Roman Republic transitioned into the Roman Empire under the rule of Augustus, the first Roman emperor. Augustus's reign marked the beginning of a period known as the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. This era, lasting about 2 centuries, was a golden age for Rome. The empire experienced stability, prosperity, and relative peace. Roman law and administration flourished during this time. The Romans built roads, aqueducts, and impressive buildings. Trade flourished across the empire. Literature, art, and philosophy also thrived. The emperors who followed Augustus, such as Trajan and Hadrian, further consolidated Roman power. They expanded the empire's borders and built impressive structures. The Colosseum and Pantheon in Rome are enduring examples of Roman architecture from this time. Despite its success, the Roman Empire faced challenges. The empire's vast size made it difficult to govern effectively. Maintaining the army and defending the borders was costly. Internal conflicts and power struggles plagued the ruling class. Economic problems, including inflation and the depletion of resources, emerged. The Roman Empire relied heavily on slave labor. As the empire expanded, it became more reliant on conquered peoples for slaves. This dependence on slavery had negative consequences. It created a large underclass with little opportunity for advancement. It also discouraged technological innovation. Section 5. Internal strife, division and decay. Political instability became a significant problem in the 3rd century AD. A series of weak or corrupt emperors took the throne. Military coups and civil wars became common. The empire nearly collapsed under the weight of its own problems. The empire faced pressure from within and outside. Different factions fought for control, weakening the empire. The empire split into two halves in the late 3rd century AD. The Western Roman Empire had its capital in Rome. The Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, had its capital in Constantinople. This division was an attempt to make the empire more manageable. However, it also highlighted the growing division within the Roman world. Section 6. The barbarian tide, pressure from the outside. While the Roman Empire struggled internally, it also faced threats from external forces. Tribes from beyond the empire's borders, often called barbarians by the Romans, exerted increasing pressure on the frontiers. These tribes, such as the Goths, Vandals, and Huns, migrated into Roman territory. They sought land, resources, and escaped from other invading groups. Roman legions clashed with these tribes in numerous battles. Sometimes the Romans were victorious, but the constant pressure took its toll. The Romans were forced to make concessions, granting land within the empire to these groups in exchange for their allegiance. This integration of foreign groups into the Roman world further changed the empire's character. Section 7. The fall of Rome. An empire divided. The Western Roman Empire continued to decline in the 5th century AD. Rome itself was sacked by Visigoths in 410 AD, a symbolic event that shocked the world. Other barbarian groups carved out their own kingdoms within the former Western Roman Empire. The last Roman emperor in the West, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed in 476 AD. This event is often considered the traditional date for the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, survived for centuries after the fall of the West. It continued to preserve Roman law, culture, and traditions in the East. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was a complex process. It was not a single event, but rather a slow decline brought about by a combination of factors. Section 8. Legacy of the Caesars, Rome's enduring impact. The Roman Empire left an indelible mark on Western civilization. Roman law, language, architecture, and political thought have influenced countless cultures. Roman law forms the basis of legal systems in many countries today. Latin, the language of ancient Rome, evolved into Romance languages like Italian, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. Roman architectural innovations such as the arch, vault, and dome influenced building practices for centuries. The Roman Republic and Empire provided models for government and political organization. The Roman Empire's rise and fall offer valuable lessons about the nature of power, the challenges of governing large empires, and the importance of adaptation and resilience. Section 9. Conclusion: the enduring allure of ancient Rome. The Roman Empire, in all its grandeur and complexity, continues to fascinate us. It is a story of military might, political intrigue, cultural achievements, and ultimate decline. Studying Rome provides valuable insights into the human condition and the forces that shape civilizations. The ruins of Roman cities, the writings of Roman authors, and the laws and customs they established continue to inspire and influence us today.
Welcome to MindSpark Daily, the channel that unlocks a world of knowledge. Today we are answering the question, what happened on the Ides of March? What led up to it? And how it changed Rome and its legacy forever? Be sure to watch until the end to learn what this event still teaches us today. Let's get into it. The Ides of March, the day that changed Rome forever. What if I told you that a single day changed the fate of the Western world? March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March. A day remembered not just for bloodshed, but for the unraveling of a republic and the birth of an empire. This is not just the story of Julius Caesar's assassination. It is a story of ambition, betrayal, and the moment Rome took a turn it could never come back from. In this video, we will unravel the layers of this legendary event. You will discover why the Ides of March has echoed through time, why Caesar's death sent Rome into chaos, and how it still influences our world today. Let us go back to one of the most pivotal days in ancient history. In 44 BC, Rome was uneasy. Julius Caesar, once a brilliant general, now held absolute power. He had declared himself dictator for life, a move that sent shockwaves through the Senate. To the people, Caesar was a hero. He gave them land, food, and hope. But to the Roman elite, he was a tyrant, destroying the traditions that had held the Republic together for centuries. Senators watched as their influence vanished. The old balance of power was crumbling, and beneath it all, resentment simmered. Among those most alarmed were Brutus and Cassius, two men who had once fought beside Caesar. Now they feared what he had become. They gathered allies. Over 60 senators joined the plot. Some were driven by patriotism, others by revenge, fear, or envy. But they all agreed Caesar had to die. And the plan? It had to be flawless. March 15th arrived. A soothsayer had warned Caesar, beware the Ides of March. His wife, Calpurnia, dreamed of blood. She begged him not to go to the Senate. But Caesar, confident and dismissive, left anyway. As he entered the Senate, he was surrounded by familiar faces, friends, allies, traitors. One man presented a petition. Caesar paused. And then it began. The first dagger struck. Then another, then another. In seconds, Caesar was surrounded. He tried to fight back, but it was useless. Blood filled the chamber. And when he saw Brutus, his friend, raise a blade, he stopped. "Es-tu brute?" And with those famous words, he fell. 23 stab wounds. The most powerful man in Rome was dead. The conspirators believed Rome would celebrate. They were wrong. The city descended into chaos, riots broke out, fear spread. Mark Antony, Caesar's closest ally, turned public fury against the assassins. At Caesar's funeral, he read the dictator's will, revealing generous gifts for the Roman people. The crowd exploded, the conspirators fled. Rome was no longer a republic, it was a battleground. What followed was a series of brutal civil wars. At the center of it all, Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir. He hunted down the conspirators, defeated his rivals, and claimed power for himself. Soon he became Augustus, Rome's first emperor. The Republic was gone. In trying to save it, the conspirators had unknowingly destroyed it. The Ides of March became more than a date. It became a symbol of betrayal, ambition, and the fragility of power. Shakespeare immortalized it, artists painted it, politicians quoted it. Today, it still reminds us, absolute power comes at a cost, and revolutions rarely go as planned. What began as an act of patriotism ended with the rise of an empire. So what do you think? Were the conspirators heroes or villains? And if Caesar had lived, would Rome have survived? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And do not forget to like, subscribe, and explore our other videos for more untold stories from the ancient world. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay curious.
What if you could walk the streets of ancient Rome, hear the footsteps echoing on marble, smell bread baking in street ovens, and witness debates in the Senate? Ancient Rome wasn't just a place in history, it was a living, breathing civilization whose legacy still shapes our world today. Welcome to Mind Spark Daily. In today's video, we're stepping beyond the myths and movies to experience ancient Rome as it truly was, vibrant, complex, and full of contradictions. We'll explore its magnificent architecture, social structures, political innovations, and daily life in a way that brings the ancient world vividly to life. Whether you're a history buff or just curious, you're about to see why Rome continues to captivate us 2,000 years later. Chapter 1. Building a Marvel, Roman Architecture and Engineering. Rome wasn't built in a day, but what they did build has stood for millennia. The Pantheon's dome remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world. Roman concrete, or opus caementicium, was so advanced that it grows stronger over time due to its unique volcanic ash mixture. The aqueducts, stretching over 300 miles, brought clean water to public baths, fountains, and even private homes, an engineering feat unmatched until modern times. The Colosseum could seat over 50,000 spectators and had a retractable awning system to shade the crowd. Their roads, famously straight, used layers of stone and gravel to remain durable, with some still in use today. These roads did not just move legions, they moved culture, commerce, and communication across an empire spanning 3 continents. Chapter 2. Life on the Streets, Daily Life in Ancient Rome. A day in the life of a Roman varied drastically depending on your status. For the wealthy elite, mornings began with visits from clients, those seeking favors or employment. Afternoons included visits to the public baths, feasting, or discussions of philosophy and politics. For plebeians and slaves, life was a hustle. Bakers started before dawn. Market vendors called out from their stalls. Children learned rhetoric and arithmetic in small schools, while others began apprenticeships. Ancient Rome even had fast food. Thermopolia offered hot meals to go, often served in terracotta bowls. The insulae, or apartment buildings, housed most of the population. Poorly constructed and densely packed, they could be dangerous. Fires were common, and upper floors lacked plumbing. Still, they buzzed with life. Chapter 3. A City of Spectacle, Entertainment and Public Life. Romans loved their spectacles. The Colosseum hosted mock sea battles, public executions, and of course, gladiator fights. Gladiators were often slaves or prisoners, but the most successful became celebrities, with fan followings and sponsorships. At the Circus Maximus, up to 250,000 people gathered for chariot races. These events were more than sport, they were political. Emperors used them to gain public favor and distract from political unrest. Public festivals, like Saturnalia, turned social norms upside down. Slaves dined like masters, and gifts were exchanged in a week-long celebration that heavily influenced modern Christmas traditions. Chapter 4. Governance and Power, How Rome Ruled. Rome's government evolved dramatically over time, from monarchy to republic to empire. The Roman Republic introduced ideas like the Senate, checks and balances, and term limits, concepts echoed in modern democracies. The 12 Tables, Rome's first written laws, gave citizens clarity on rights and punishments. Legal principles like innocent until proven guilty and the burden of proof lies with the accuser originated in Roman courts. During the empire, power shifted to emperors. Augustus, Rome's first emperor, cleverly retained the appearance of a republic while holding absolute control. This facade maintained stability, but as the empire grew, so did its challenges: corruption, military overreach, and civil wars. Chapter 5. Faith and Philosophy, Religion and Thought in Rome. The Romans adopted and adapted gods from the Greeks, Etruscans, and other conquered cultures. Jupiter, Venus, Mars, they were all Romanized versions of older deities. religious life revolved around household gods, lars, state rituals, and public temples. But Rome also became a center of philosophical thought. Stoicism, introduced by Greek philosophers, became particularly influential among Rome's elite. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote Meditations, a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy, still widely read today. By the 4th century CE, Christianity had taken hold, first persecuted, then legalized under Constantine, and eventually becoming the empire's official religion, a transformation that forever altered Rome and the Western world. Chapter 6, From Table to Tongue, Roman Language, Cuisine, and Culture. Latin, Rome's language, is the root of the Romance languages: Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. Even English, though Germanic, draws over 60% of its vocabulary from Latin. Roman cuisine was a reflection of its diverse empire. Dishes included dates from the Middle East, oysters from Britain, and spices from Asia. Garum, the famed fermented fish sauce, was a delicacy found in nearly every kitchen. The Romans also left a profound mark on art and literature. Writers like Virgil, Ovid, and Seneca shaped storytelling for centuries. Mosaics, frescoes, and sculptures adorned homes, temples, and bathhouses. Art meant not just for beauty, but for education and status. Chapter 7, Decline and Legacy, the Fall and What Came After. Rome's fall did not happen in a single day. It was a slow unraveling due to military overspending, economic crises, political instability, and invasions by groups like the Visigoths and Vandals. In 476 CE, the Western Roman Empire officially collapsed, but its eastern counterpart, the Byzantine Empire, flourished for nearly another 1,000 years. Rome's legacy lived on. Its systems of law, urban planning, architecture, and language became the bedrock of Western civilization. Renaissance thinkers revived Roman ideals, and the U.S. founding fathers looked to Rome when designing a republic. Ancient Rome wasn't just a city, it was an idea, a civilization that dared to dream bigger, build stronger, and govern more broadly than any before it. Its achievements and mistakes offer lessons for us all. If you enjoyed this journey through ancient Rome, hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dives into history, and let us know in the comments, which part of Roman life would you have loved or hated experiencing firsthand? Thanks for watching, and Vale Amici, farewell friends. The brutal lives of ancient Roman gladiators, blood, fame, and survival. Welcome to MindSpark Daily. Let's get into today's topic. When you think of ancient Rome, you probably picture gladiators, fearless fighters battling to the death in grand arenas. But what was life really like for these warriors? Today we are diving into the brutal, complex, and surprising world of Rome's most infamous entertainers. Gladiators were not just bloodthirsty brawlers. Many were enslaved prisoners of war, criminals, or condemned men, forced into a life of combat. But not all. Some volunteered, known as auctorati, seeking fame, money, or to pay off debts. They came from across the empire, Gauls, Thracians, Carthaginians, and were often renamed and rebranded to match their fighting style. Gladiators were categorized into types like Murmillo, with a heavy shield and fish-shaped helmet; Retiaris, lightly armored, armed with a net and trident; Thrax, short sword and curved shield, modeled after Thracian warriors. Each match was a performance, a spectacle crafted for the crowd. Gladiators lived and trained in ludi, or gladiator schools. The most famous, the Ludus Magnus, or Big Training Ground, located just beside the Colosseum. Training was grueling, under the watch of a lanista, often a former gladiator. The lanista was a mix of coach, boss, and owner. Gladiators learned how to fight for survival and provide a spectacle. They practiced daily with wooden swords, endured extreme discipline, and followed strict diets. Surprisingly, many gladiators followed a plant-based diet, earning them the nickname barley men due to their diet of barley and beans. This is confirmed by recent bone analyses, which show they consumed considerable amounts of legumes and grains to build mass. Injuries were common, even in training, and those too injured to fight again were cast aside, or worse. Gladiator games, or munera, were originally held as funeral rites, offerings of blood to honor the dead. But over time, they evolved into state-sponsored events used to entertain and control the masses. Matches were highly choreographed, lasting 10 to 15 minutes on average. Contrary to widespread belief, not every fight ended in death. Gladiators were expensive to train, and crowds often called for mercy with a thumbs up. Still, survival did not mean safety. Aside from one-on-one duels, other events included venaciones, beast hunts with lions, tigers, and elephants. Naumachiae, mock naval battles, sometimes flooding the arena. Execution spectacles, criminals killed by wild animals or staged myths. Some gladiators became superstars, cheered by tens of thousands. Their names were etched in walls as ancient fan graffiti. Victorious fighters won palms of victory, money, and sometimes even freedom. One of the most famous? Spartacus, a Thracian gladiator who led a massive slave revolt in 73 BCE. His rebellion shook Rome to its core and inspired stories for millennia. Another was Flama, a Syrian fighter who won freedom multiple times and refused it, choosing to keep fighting. He died at just 30, after 34 recorded matches after being stabbed in the neck by a trident. Then there was Commodus, the emperor himself, who fancied himself a gladiator and forced real fighters to let him win in rigged matches, a dangerous mix of ego and politics. Gladiators lived in barracks under constant surveillance. They were not allowed to leave freely, and many were treated as property. Despite their fame, they occupied a low social status, often compared to prostitutes or executioners. But within their ranks, camaraderie was strong. They trained together, led together, and honored their dead. Tombstones show evidence of gladiator brotherhoods who pooled resources for burials. Some even had romantic fan bases. Upper-class Roman women were known to fall in love with gladiators, writing about them in poems and letters. But any relationship outside the arena was rare and heavily frowned upon. As the Roman Empire began to crumble, so too did the games. The rise of Christianity condemned the bloodshed. By the late 4th century, Emperor Honorius officially banned gladiator fights, although illegal games persisted for decades. The last known recorded match occurred around 404 CE, after a monk named Telemachus protested the violence and was stoned to death by the crowd. Over time, the Colosseum crumbled and gladiators faded into legend, but their impact remains, echoed in everything from sports arenas to action films. Gladiators were not just killers, they were victims of circumstance, symbols of power, and reluctant celebrities. Their lives were brutal, their deaths often senseless, but their stories endure. If you found this dive into the gladiator world fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into ancient history. Tell us in the comments, would you have survived a day in the life of a Roman gladiator? And do not miss our upcoming video, Secrets of the Colosseum, How Rome Built an Icon of Blood and Glory.
The year was 1929. America was riding high. The roaring 20s were in full swing. Jazz filled the air, flapper dresses twirled, and the stock market soared to dizzying heights. But this exuberance masked a dangerous reality. An economic bubble built on speculation and shaky foundations. Then, in October 1929, the bubble burst. The stock market crashed, wiping out billions of dollars in wealth. The crash sent shockwaves through the American economy, ushering in the darkest chapter in its financial history, the Great Depression. This cataclysmic event would forever alter the nation's psyche, leaving an indelible mark on its people and its future. The 1920s, a decade of unprecedented prosperity and cultural dynamism, sowed the seeds for the 1929 crash. The end of World War I brought a surge in consumer spending, fueled by new technologies like automobiles and radios. Mass production techniques increased efficiency and profits but also led to overproduction in certain industries. Easy credit policies encouraged consumers to buy now and pay later, leading to a dangerous buildup of personal debt. The stock market, reflecting this economic boom, attracted millions of new investors, many with little understanding of financial markets. Unregulated and fueled by speculation, the stage was set for disaster. By the late 1920s, the stock market had become detached from economic reality. Speculation ran rampant, with investors buying stocks not based on their underlying value, but on the expectation of selling them quickly for a profit. The practice of buying on margin, where investors borrowed heavily to purchase stocks, magnified both profits and potential losses. Stock prices soared to unsustainable levels, creating an illusion of wealth. Companies with little to no earnings saw their stock prices skyrocket, driven by hype and rumors. This speculative frenzy created a house of cards, poised to collapse at the slightest tremor. On October 24, 1929, now known as Black Thursday, the stock market began its precipitous descent. As investors panicked and rushed to sell, stock prices plunged, wiping out billions of dollars in value. The following Monday, a brief respite offered a glimmer of hope, but it was short-lived. On Tuesday, October 29th, Black Tuesday, the market crashed with even greater ferocity. Millions of shares were traded in a frenzy of selling, but there were few buyers. Stock prices plummeted to a fraction of their former values. The ticker tape, unable to keep up with the volume of trades, ran hours behind, adding to the chaos and confusion. Section 5. Echoes of collapse panic grips the nation. The stock market crash sent shockwaves throughout the American economy. Banks, heavily invested in the market, suffered massive losses and began to fail. Depositors, fearing for their savings, rushed to withdraw their money, triggering bank runs across the nation. With banks collapsing and credit drying up, businesses were unable to secure the loans they needed to operate. Factories closed, businesses failed, and unemployment soared. Consumer spending plummeted, further deepening the economic crisis. Section 6. The Great Depression, a decade of despair. The 1929 stock market crash marked the beginning of the Great Depression, a catastrophic event that sent shockwaves through the global economy. It was the most severe economic downturn in modern history, affecting not just the United States but countries around the world. The Depression gripped the nation for a decade, causing widespread despair and uncertainty. Millions of people found themselves unemployed, homeless, and hungry. Bread lines stretched for blocks, a stark reminder of the desperation that had taken hold. Shantytowns, known as Hoovervilles, sprang up across the country, named derisively after President Herbert Hoover, who was blamed for the crisis. Families struggled to survive, often relying on each other and their communities for support. The Dust Bowl, a severe drought that devastated the Midwest, added to the misery, turning fertile land into a barren wasteland. Thousands of farmers were forced to abandon their land and seek a better life elsewhere, often heading west in search of new opportunities. The Great Depression was a time of immense hardship, testing the limits of human endurance and spirit. Despite the overwhelming challenges, the resilience of the American people shone through. Communities banded together, and individuals found ways to persevere. The Great Depression left an enduring mark on the nation's social fabric, reshaping society and influencing future generations. Its legacy is a testament to the strength and resilience of those who lived through it. Section 7. Lessons from the Abyss. Regulation and Understanding. The 1929 crash and the ensuing Great Depression taught the world painful lessons about the importance of financial regulation and the need for a deeper understanding of market dynamics. The stock market crash was not just a financial disaster, it was a social and economic catastrophe that affected millions of lives. People lost their life savings, businesses went bankrupt, and unemployment soared to unprecedented levels. The lack of a safety net and the absence of regulatory oversight exacerbated the situation, leading to widespread poverty and despair. The lack of regulations in the 1920s, coupled with rampant speculation and excessive leverage, created an environment ripe for disaster. Investors were borrowing money to buy stocks, a practice known as buying on margin, which inflated stock prices to unsustainable levels. When the market began to falter, panic set in, and the bubble burst, leading to a cascade of financial failures. The speculative frenzy of the Roaring Twenties was a ticking time bomb that eventually exploded, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. In response to the crisis, the United States government implemented a series of reforms aimed at preventing a repeat of the 1929 crash. President Franklin D. Roosevelt and his administration took bold steps to restore confidence in the financial system. These reforms were part of the New Deal, a comprehensive set of economic measures designed to provide relief, recovery, and reform. The goal was to stabilize the economy, create jobs, and protect consumers and investors from future financial calamities. These reforms included the creation of the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, to regulate the stock market. The SEC was established to enforce laws against market manipulation and fraud, ensuring that investors received accurate and complete information. By overseeing the securities industry, the SEC aimed to restore trust in the financial markets and prevent the kind of reckless behavior that had led to the crash. The establishment of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, to ensure bank deposits was another crucial reform. The FDIC provided a safety net for bank customers, guaranteeing their deposits up to a certain amount. This measure helped to prevent bank runs, where panicked customers would withdraw their money en masse, leading to bank failures. By ensuring deposits, the FDIC restored confidence in the banking system and contributed to financial stability. The passage of the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated commercial and investment banking activities, was another significant reform. This legislation aimed to reduce the risk of financial speculation by preventing banks from engaging in both commercial lending and investment activities. By creating a clear distinction between these two types of banking, the Glass-Steagall Act sought to protect consumers and reduce the likelihood of future financial crises. These reforms collectively laid the foundation for a more stable and transparent financial system, ensuring that the lessons learned from the Great Depression would not be forgotten. Section 8, The Enduring Legacy, a Turning Point in History. The 1929 stock market crash stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of financial markets. It was a day that sent shockwaves across the globe, leading to a cascade of economic failures and personal tragedies. The crash didn't just affect the wealthy. It had far-reaching consequences that touched every corner of society. The devastating consequences of unchecked speculation became evident as banks failed, businesses closed, and millions of people lost their jobs. The panic and uncertainty of that time were palpable, as people scrambled to salvage what little they had left. It ushered in an era of government intervention in the economy. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal policies aimed to stabilize the economy and provide relief to those suffering. These measures marked a significant shift in the role of government, from a hands-off approach to active involvement in economic affairs. This period led to a fundamental reassessment of economic theory and policy. Economists and policymakers began to understand the importance of regulation and oversight to prevent such a catastrophe from happening again. The New Deal programs, including Social Security and unemployment insurance, laid the groundwork for the modern welfare state. The crash and the Great Depression that followed had a profound impact on American society, shaping the political landscape, influencing social programs, and altering the course of history. The images of breadlines and soup kitchens are stark reminders of the hardships faced by millions. These events left an indelible mark on the national psyche, fostering a sense of resilience and a demand for greater social safety nets. The political rallies and the enactment of social programs during this time reflect the changing attitudes towards government's role in society. The lessons learned from this tumultuous period continue to resonate today. Historians and economists study the 1929 crash to understand the complexities of financial markets and the importance of regulatory frameworks. Serving as a cautionary tale, the 1929 crash reminds us of the potential dangers of speculative bubbles and the need for vigilance in financial practices. It underscores the importance of responsible financial practices and sound economic policies. As we navigate the complexities of today's financial world, the echoes of 1929 serve as a guide, reminding us to learn from the past to build a more stable and equitable future.
Ancient Roman sweat and modern skincare, a surprising connection. Did you know that ancient Romans used to scrape off their sweat and apply it to their skin? Could this bizarre practice actually hold a secret to healthy skin? Skincare trends come and go faster than ever, but there's a constant fascination with the beauty practices of the past. Today, we're diving into a truly unique ancient Roman custom, the use of sweat for skincare. We'll explore how this practice connects to our modern quest for healthy, radiant skin. We face a multitude of skincare challenges today. Acne, dryness, wrinkles, and sensitivity are just a few. We spend billions on products promising to solve these problems. Many are searching for natural and effective remedies. This search often leads us to explore alternative approaches, including historical ones. Let's travel back to ancient Rome. The Romans were obsessed with cleanliness. However, their understanding of hygiene differed greatly from ours. Public baths, or thermae, were central to Roman life. They were social hubs where people cleansed and relaxed. Sweat wasn't viewed with the same disgust as it is today. In fact, it was believed to possess beneficial properties. Romans would scrape off their sweat using a strigil. They would then mix it with oils and other ingredients. This mixture was believed to cleanse and rejuvenate the skin. Some even believed that gladiators' sweat had special powers. It was thought to impart strength and vitality. Using sweat directly on the skin might seem unappealing, but modern research offers a surprising connection. Studies have shown that sweat contains natural antimicrobial peptides. These peptides can help fight off bacteria that cause acne. Sweat can also act as a natural moisturizer. It contains electrolytes and other hydrating compounds. We're not advocating for a return to Roman sweat practices. However, understanding our body's natural processes is key. Some modern skincare products mimic the beneficial properties of sweat. Ingredients like electrolytes and amino acids are often included. These ingredients help to hydrate and protect the skin. Exploring the ancient Roman use of sweat offers a fascinating glimpse into the history of skincare. While their methods may seem unconventional, the underlying principle resonates with modern skincare philosophies. Nature often holds the answers. By understanding our bodies and the historical context of beauty practices, we can gain valuable insights. These insights can help us achieve glowing, healthy skin. The Romans may have been onto something, after all. What are your thoughts on ancient beauty secrets? Do you think there's something to be learned from the past? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. We love hearing from you, so leave a comment. Thanks for watching.
Passion, betrayal, blood. No royal dynasty in history captured the world's imagination quite like the Tudors. From a king who married 6 times and executed 2 of his wives to a queen known as Bloody Mary, and a virgin monarch who ruled with unmatched brilliance, the Tudors were anything but ordinary. But behind the crowns and castles were dark secrets, whispered scandals, and ruthless ambition. What really happened behind the velvet curtains of Tudor England? Today, we are unlocking the truth. Welcome to MindSpark Daily. This is the Tudors. Secret scandals and bloody thrones. Who were the Tudors? The Tudor dynasty ruled England from 1485 to 1603, a relatively short period, just 118 years. But what they lacked in longevity, they made up for in drama. It began with Henry VII, who defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field, ending the Wars of the Roses. He brought a war-torn England some stability and founded the most infamous royal house in British history. His son, Henry VIII, would change England forever. Let's get into it. Henry VIII, the tyrant king. If the Tudors had a poster child for scandal, it was Henry VIII. He was not just known for his 6 wives. He was the king who broke away from the Catholic Church, not for religious reasons, but because the Pope refused to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. MindSpark. Henry VIII's love life triggered the English Reformation and the formation of the Church of England. Let us run through his marriages. Catherine of Aragon, divorced. Anne Boleyn, executed for treason, adultery, and incest with her brother, charges widely believed to be false. Jane Seymour died after giving him his only legitimate male heir, Edward VI. Anne of Cleves divorced after just 6 months. Henry called her the Flanders mare due to her appearance. Catherine Howard executed for adultery at just 19 years old. Catherine Parr outlived him. Scandal spotlight. Anne Boleyn's downfall was the result of palace intrigue, court politics, and Henry's growing paranoia. She was beheaded at the Tower of London in 1536. Her last words? "I come hither to die, for according to the law and by the law I am judged to die, and therefore I will speak nothing against it." Edward VI, the Boy King. Henry's only son, Edward VI, ascended the throne in 1422 at just 9 years old. He was a sickly child, heavily influenced by Protestant advisors, more so by his stepmother Catherine Parr and his godfather, Archbishop Thomas Cranmer. Though intelligent, he died young at age 15, and his short reign is often overshadowed by what came next. A succession crisis. Mary I, the Bloody Queen. After Edward's death, England was thrown into chaos. Lady Jane Grey, Edward's Protestant cousin, was named Queen, but only ruled for 9 days before being deposed and eventually executed. Enter Mary I, Henry's eldest daughter. A devout Catholic, she took back the throne with fire and fury. Her mission? Restore Catholicism, and she did it through brutal means. Over 280 Protestants were burned at the stake during her reign, earning her the nickname Bloody Mary. Chilling fact. She had phantom pregnancies, believing she was carrying an heir when she was not, leaving the nation on edge, and without a successor. Mary's reign was short and dark, and after her death in 1558, her half-sister took over. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. Queen Elizabeth I is often considered England's greatest monarch. Her 45-year reign was known as the Elizabethan Golden Age, spanning from 1558 to 1603. She never married, famously stating, "I am married to England." But that didn't stop the rumors. Royal rumors. Her close relationship with Robert Dudley sparked years of gossip. Some believed she used romance as a tool of diplomacy. Others claimed she secretly gave birth to child. A man by the name of Arthur claimed to be the illegitimate child of Robert Dudley and Elizabeth I. However, this could not be proven. But her legacy? Undeniable. She defeated the Spanish Armada in 1588, supported explorers like Sir Francis Drake, and oversaw a flourishing of the arts, including the rise of William Shakespeare. Fun fact: Elizabeth wore lead-based makeup called Venetian ceruse to maintain a ghostly complexion. It likely damaged her skin and health over time, but it became iconic. She ruled until her death in 1603, ending the Tudor dynasty, as she had no heirs. The Tudors were the ultimate royal soap opera, but beyond the headlines, here are a few lesser-known secrets. Henry VIII may have had a rare blood disorder, which could explain the multiple miscarriages his wives experienced and his violent mood swings. Elizabeth's advisors likely destroyed many of her personal letters to preserve her reputation. The Tower of London was not just a prison, it was the backdrop for betrayals, ghost stories, and royal executions that still haunt the site today. And let us not forget, the Tudor court was full of spies, double agents, coded letters, and hidden alliances. It was not just a monarchy, it was a battlefield. The Tudors were not just rulers, they were legends. A dynasty built on blood, brilliance, and betrayal. Which Tudor figure do you find most fascinating? Was Henry VIII a mad tyrant or a strategic genius? Was Elizabeth I truly a virgin queen, or the greatest political mind of her time? Let us know in the comments, and if you want more royal scandals, ancient mysteries, and powerful stories from history, make sure to subscribe, like, and tap the notification bell. And remember, history is not just about the past. It is about the people who dared to shape the future, no matter the cost. Thanks for watching MindSpark Daily.